Hello everybody and happy Christmas Eve's Eve. Now Sam and I are coming to you today from the Crumbs and Doilies bakery here in Soho with our very last Christmas recipe for 2020. So today I'm going to show you how to make Lebkuchen, and Lebkuchen, I believe it is a general kind of term for a Christmas spiced German cookie. These are absolutely delicious and you normally find them at all the German markets here in the UK this time of year. Every town has got a German market and the smells that you get from all the food and the Lebkuchen stands is just amazing. Obviously we can't go visiting German markets this year, so I'm going to show you how you can make your very own, which is great fun. I've had loads of fun coming up with this recipe because, like I said, you can kind of like mix around the different spices, the flavorings, different kind of nuts and stuff. So this is my version of Lebkuchen, and we're going to start with some sugar. So I've got 170 grams of Muscavado sugar here. This is like the deepest sugar that you can find. It is full of molasses, it's really sticky, it's really treacly in flavour. So I've got 170 grams of that. I'm going to put it into this large bowl here. If you can't find this, don't worry, you can just use any kind of brown sugar, but the deeper the better. So do try and look for Muscavado if you can. And then into that we're going to add honey. So I've got 180 grams of honey here. And sometimes honey in recipes is just used as a sweetener, but this time I really want the flavour of the honey coming through, so I have gone for a slightly higher quality of honey this time. So that's going in with our Muscavado sugar. And then into there we are also going to add some butter, but only a little amount of butter this time. I've got just 55 grams of unsalted butter, which I have softened. It is soft, it's getting harder by the second here because it's very cold. So that's going into our bowl, and then first of all we just need to whip this up. So obviously there's not loads of butter, so the sugar's not going to completely dissolve also, but we just want to combine it. So a couple of minutes. I'm using a hand whisk, but you could do a stand mixer as well. So next up we are going to add 2 eggs. We're going to add them one at a time, beating really well in between each. So I've just mixed the eggs in for a couple of minutes each. You can see that the sugar has started to dissolve, but don't worry, it's going to take ages for that to happen. So we're going to go in with our dry ingredients. Now there is a lot of dry ingredients here. We're going to start with some plain flour, so all-purpose flour, and we've got 300 grams going straight into our bowl. So sift it through to make sure that there aren't any lumps of flour in your batter. Oops. And then it is time for all of this lot. So I've got 150 grams of ground almonds. You can use a mixture of ground almonds and other nuts, like maybe hazelnuts as well, but I'm going just with plain almonds. And then I've got 2 whole tablespoons of cocoa powder. And then for my spices, I have got 2 teaspoons of ginger. I've got a teaspoon and a half of cinnamon. And then I have got half a teaspoon of both ground mace and ground cloves, and a quarter teaspoon of nutmeg and allspice. And then for my raising agents, I've got half a teaspoon of baking powder, a quarter teaspoon of bicarbonate of soda, and a nice half teaspoon of salt. And that is it. So we're gonna sift all of that through. Obviously the ground almonds might not all go through, but that's okay. There we go. And lastly, before we mix this together, I'm going to add in the zest of 1 lemon. You could do a mixture of lemon and orange or just orange, but I think that the lemon is working best with the rest of the flavours in here. And this is a lot of flavour, but it really, really does work. So once we've got our zest in, we're just going to grab a spoon and mix all of this together until it comes into a nice smooth dough. Once all of your batter has come together, It is pretty stiff, right? But we actually want it to firm up a little bit more. So I'm gonna put this in the fridge now for about 10 to 15 minutes because we are gonna make balls of dough, but also we're gonna try and roll some out so we can make some shapes. So we do want this to firm up a little bit more. So I'm gonna pop this in the fridge for about 15 minutes, have a clear up, and then we can get shaping. Okay, it is time to shape our cookies. So like I said, we're going to do two different things. First of all, we're going to do some where we roll balls. So I've got my scales here and I'm going to take 40 grams of the cookie dough and I'm going to roll it in my hands. Now, if this is very sticky and you're not using gloves, a little trick here is you can put a tiny little bit of cold water on the palms of your hands. Not loads, because you don't want to like put loads of moisture into the cookie, but just enough so that it doesn't stick to your hands. It's a really great little trick, this. And you just want to roll it into a ball and pop it onto a baking tray. But then the other kind we're going to do is we're going to try and roll some out and cut some little stars or any kind of shape that you want to. But because this is very soft dough, we're not going to be able to roll out like a huge sheet like we would with a gingerbread. So we're just going to do a little bit at a time. So we'll put down a little bit of flour. And then we'll just grab ourselves a little chunk of dough, roll it into a little bit of a ball, and then grab yourself a rolling pin and dust it, of course, and then just gently roll it out. And we're not going to go too thin with these, maybe about 1.5 centimeters to 1/2 inch. And then grab your cutter and we'll just chomp them out. And the rest of it we can just put back in the bowl and reuse. And then we'll pop those onto the baking sheet as well. So I'm gonna do a mix of both balls and stars. So let's get shaping. Okey-doke, so once you've filled up all your baking trays, it's time to bake them. If you've got any leftover batter, you can just put it back in the fridge. You can keep it for a couple of days in there as well. Some people actually told me that traditionally you would make your batter and you'd leave it at room temperature for a day or two for the flavors to mature anyway. I haven't had time to try that, but I am going to give it a go. So I've got my oven preheated to 160 degrees C, that's fan assisted. I'm gonna put them in for about 12 minutes and then we're gonna test them because they're different shapes and sizes. So we'll go for 12 minutes and we'll see what they're looking like. Okay, so I'm just going to give these the little finger test. So I'm going to push them in the middle and they're not quite springing back yet. So I'm going to leave the stars in for about another minute and the round ones for another 2 to 3 minutes until they don't kind of sink when you press them. These cookies are so adorable. Look how chubby they are. I just love them and they smell amazing too. Now that they've kind of cooled down, they're a little bit crispy on the outside and when we break them open, they're going to be kind of cakey in the middle and soft. They're absolutely gorgeous. You can eat them just like this, but you can also glaze them. Now traditionally, you can either glaze them in chocolate, which is basically just melted chocolate, or you can do like a sugared glaze, which is what I'm going to do because I think it really lends itself to the flavor as well. A little bit of sweetness coming through. And I'm going to do a rum glaze because again, rum with all the spices in there is like a perfect combination. Of course, you don't have to do rum. You can just go with some water, like a simple glacé, or you could maybe put in a little bit of lemon juice. But I'm going to start off with about a teaspoon of some dark rum going into some icing sugar here. And then I'm just going to top it up with some water. And we're going to go for quite a thin consistency here because it's not going to be like a thick glaze. It's just going to be quite thin so you can see all those beautiful cracks on our cookies. So I haven't given you like exact kind of quantities here because you basically just want to go for the consistency. So when you're adding the liquid, just go a little bit at a time, and then you can taste it along the way. Maybe you want to add a little bit more rum or juice or something, but just little bit by little bit. So you can see just how runny and loose this glaze is because this is simply a glaze. It's not going to be like a layer of icing on top or anything like that. So I'm just going to grab my first cookie. I'm going to dunk it into the glaze and I'm just going to hold it upside down for a while to let some of that excess kind of glaze drip off. And then once we think it's there, we'll put it onto a tray here. And you'll see all those lovely cracks coming through and the glaze is just adding a little bit of shine. It's going to add a little bit of sweetness as well. And there you go, that is my recipe for Lebkuchen. It is a really quick, fun recipe that you can make with your family. Just before Christmas, you've got time to do this and you can use all the different spices and flavors that you've got in your cupboard. I'm gonna give mine a little try. Quite a good one. The flavors in this cookie are just absolutely delicious, particularly the brown sugar giving it that treacly hit, but also the textures are brilliant because you've got this lovely crispy outer edge and then a lovely cakey center as well. And tomorrow they're going to be even more soft and cakey in the middle. So I really hope you give these a go before Christmas, and I really hope that you have a very Merry Christmas. So from me, Sam, and of course Gemma, and the whole Crumbs and Doilies crew, we wish you a very happy Christmas, and thank you so much for supporting us this year. I feel a bit emotional, and thank you for making me feel so welcome on the channel whilst Gemma is at home with her baby. She will hopefully be back very soon to give you guys some more recipes, and I'll be back with Sam next week to give you the best cake recipe to end off this very strange 2020 that we've just had and to welcome in 2021, which fingers crossed is going to be a whole lot better for all of us. So happy Christmas, everybody.